Ms. Quigley, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. Could you tell me how you got involved in the Rohingya issue and about your work on the U.S. campaign for Burma?
So I would have to say that about 10 years ago, I got involved when I was working on the Thai-Burma border, and I learned about some cases of Rohingya women being raped by members of the Burmese military. And so I'd been working with a local organization at the time to raise awareness about the sexual violence that women from Burma suffer at the hands of the Burmese military.
And what kind of organizations have you had to collaborate with in working on the Rohingya plight?
Since I joined the U.S. campaign for Burma 7 years ago, after my time on the Thai-Burma border, we work with many different organizations. And so that would be, human rights organizations globally, working, with policymakers around the world, particularly here in the U.S. Or at the United Nations. We work with organizations inside Burma, whether they be political parties or human rights organizations or environmental organizations, those that focus specifically, say, on political prisoners. And so just sort of anybody that could be helpful in trying to address the serious issues that the communities face.
I've just mentioned your recent conference on U.S.-Burma relations and the plight of the Rohingya. Could you tell me some of the things that were discussed at the meeting?
Sure. So it was sort of an academic conference at American University, and so some professors and students there wanted to raise awareness about the worsening situation for the Rohingya, and then making that connection with what is U.S.-Burma policy and relations, and is it focused on the Rohingya, or should it be more focused on the Rohingya than it currently is? And so myself, Dan Sullivan from United to End Genocide, Benjamin Zawacki, who's formerly of Amnesty International, but is currently a fellow at Harvard University, as well as Dr. Waqaruddin, were able to sort of speak about the issues, not just facing the Rohingya, but the implications under international law and the implications for U.S.-Burma relations.
And do you feel the United States government's diplomatic approach to the situation is the correct course of action to kind of quell the turmoil in Myanmar?
For us, the problem is that the U.S. government feels as if diplomacy is the option to go with. And they look at this as sort of like a sideline issue as opposed to an issue so serious that it should dominate U.S.-Burma relations. And so for us, what we would like the U.S. government to do is not consider this sort of just something that we should talk to the Burmese about. We need to take seriously that the Burmese government is part of the perpetrators of the abuses against the Rohingya. And so therefore, we shouldn't have business as usual with the rest of our relationship. So for instance, there was a defense ministers meeting at the beginning of April in Hawaii. And so they didn't cancel that. They didn't discuss the Rohingya situation. And so you have the third highest ranking member of the Burmese military having this huge opportunity as chair of ASEAN to co-host this meeting with the U.S. defense minister, while just a few days before, all of the aid organizations helping Rohingya had to flee because of violence that took place. And, that's a month after MSF was kicked out, and they are the only healthcare provider for more than 700,000 people. And so in a situation like this, we sort of say, we shouldn't go ahead with business as usual. Business as usual should be suspended until the Burmese make progress in addressing the desperate situation that they have created for the Rohingya.
I know you spoke a little bit about this at the conference, but could you tell me, as Myanmar's reformation moves the country away from the junta regimes of the past, could you describe how the post-military regime government is handling policy concerning the Rohingya community, and how it compares to the previous military-led government's policies?
So basically, the current government in Burma is carrying out some of the exact same policies that it did under the military regime. And so there's sort of a few big reasons for that. One is it's the exact same people in control in the government. It's just some of them took off their uniforms while others still wear them. And so one of the phrases that we commonly hear in Burma about that change is that it's old wine in new bottles. And so you do see some of the same persecution policies taking place over several decades, and that has not changed. What we have seen that has worsened since this sort of like quasi-civilian transition has taken place is that the Rohingya have been targeted even more than they had before. And for us, that was by design by the government. That was not something that was organic on a local level. A lot of the times I think some of the media confuses the fact that a lot of the perpetrators are civilians themselves with thinking that this is potentially intercommunal violence and don't take into consideration sort of the larger policy issues. So you have government ordinances and directives that say 2-child limits for couples in northern Rakhine State. You have restrictions on marriage, restrictions on movement, restrictions on education. And what we've seen more recently with the violence is this level of impunity, this rounding up and imprisonment of Rohingya males. That we see the denial of humanitarian assistance over the past 2 months, the taking away of access to healthcare. And so all of these things sort of show that the government has increased the level of persecution that it commits against the Rohingya.
Thank you, Ms. Quigley. Did you have any closing sentiments that you wanted to offer our listeners today?
For everybody out there, just, doing everything and anything we can, because we feel as if we are in a situation where we're seeing the precursors to genocide. And none of us want that. And so that is why we feel as if everybody should pressure the U.S. government, pressure the Burmese government to make this a priority in preventing that from happening.